Look, you have to understand something about me before I tell you what happened. I'm not a creative type. I don't have an active imagination. I'm Matteo. I deal in data. Hard numbers, clear facts, rows and columns that always add up if you do the work properly. I work on the 40th floor of the Helix Tower. It's one of those glass needles sticking out of the financial district. By 9 p.m., the air conditioning hums this low, steady note that sounds almost like a chant. And the lights in the hallway motion sensor off until it's just me and the glow of my monitors. Honestly, I like it. Most people can't handle the quiet, but for me, it's safe. People are messy, they're loud, they interrupt your workflow. They ask you how your weekend was when they don't actually care. Up here, it's just geometry and silence. I have a routine. I organize my desk, pens parallel to the keyboard, coffee cup on the coaster, noise-canceling headphones on but playing nothing, just dampening the world. I'm gunning for the senior analyst position. It's not even that I love the work, really. It's just that I need to know where I'm going. I need the trajectory. If I hit my targets, I get the promotion. If I get the promotion, I get the corner office and the salary bump. It's a formula. Input, output. Simple. So, I stay late. I eat my takeout pad thai out of the box, wipe the fort clean with a napkin, and stare out the floor-to-ceiling windows. From 150 meters up, the cars look like flowing electricity. It feels distant, safe. At least, it used to. The reason I work like this, the reason I don't have a girlfriend or a dog or even a plant that I haven't managed to kill, is my dad. It's hard to talk about. When I was like 12, he just stopped. He didn't die, not then. He just had this mental break. One day he was making breakfast, and the next, he sat down in his armchair by the front window and didn't get up. For 5 years. He just stared. He watched the street outside our house with this blank, terrifying intensity. He stopped talking to me, stopped looking at me. He was just a shell, witnessing the world go by, but refusing to be part of it. I used to stand in front of him, waving my hand, screaming, trying to get him to blink. Nothing. I'm 35 now. And I'm terrified. I mean, actually paralyzed by the fear that I have his brain, that one day I'm gonna sit down and never get up again. That's why I chase the promotion. That's why I make sure my bank account is growing. I tell myself that if I'm moving forward, if I'm successful, then I'm not him. I'm not stagnant. But the irony isn't lost on me, okay? I know how it looks. I'm sitting in a glass box in the sky, alone, staring out a window just like he did. Tonight was different, though. I was looking out at the building across the street. Another glass tower, mostly dark. And I saw something. Usually at night, the windows just reflect my own office back at me. My sad little desk, my tie, my tired face. But tonight, past my reflection, about 10 floors down in the opposite building, I saw a figure standing right at the glass. Just standing there. And the worst part? I don't think they were looking at the view. I think they were looking right at me, So I did what any rational person does. I checked the data. I looked at the time, 9:42 p.m. I looked at the location, a fire escape landing on roughly the 30th floor of the standard brick building squeezed between the newer glass ones opposite. Then I called the police. I didn't use the emergency line. It wasn't chaotic enough for that. I just called the local precinct. I told them there was a potential jumper, a person in distress. I sounded calm. I sounded professional. 20 minutes later, I saw the flashing lights paint the street below in rhythm. Blue, red, blue, red. I watched two uniformed officers come out onto that fire escape with flashlights. Their beams cut through the gloom, sweeping over the rusted metal, the brickwork, the window ledges. Nothing. The landing was empty. One of the officers called me back. He sounded bored. "Sir, we swept the exterior. There's nobody up there. Just some pigeons and an old tarp. Shadows play tricks at night, especially with the city lights." I hung up and sat there, my hand gripping the phone so hard my knuckles turned white. Shadows. Right. I know what a shadow looks like. Shadows don't wear heavy wool coats. Shadows don't have weight. That was the first crack in the glass. The thoughts started whispering in the back of my head, sounding exactly like my dad's silence. "It's starting. You're seeing things. You're breaking, Mateo. Just like him." I came back the next night. Of course I did. Routine is my armor, right? If I stopped working, I'd be admitting something was wrong. So I sat there, 9 p.m., spreadsheets open, eyes fixed on the window. At 9:15, the figure was there. Same spot, same heavy, shapeless coat, same stillness. And that was the thing that made my stomach drop like the elevator cable had snapped. The stillness. It wasn't normal. Humans move, we shift weight, we scratch our noses, we check our phones, we shiver in the wind. We are biological machines. We have a pulse. This thing, it was absolute. It was as static as a photograph. The wind at that altitude is strong. I could see a loose cable on the building flapping violently, but the figure's coat didn't flutter, not an inch. I couldn't handle the glass anymore. I needed to remove the filter. I unlocked the maintenance door to the tiny smoker's balcony we have on the west side. The wind hit me instantly, cold and loud, smelling of ozone and exhaust. I gripped the railing, leaning out over the drop, staring across the gap between the buildings. It was about 40 meters across. "Hey," my voice sounded thin, snatched away by the wind. "Hey, you on the ledge? Don't jump." I waited for a flinch, a head turn, anything. Nothing. It just stood there, facing the abyss. And even though I was 40 meters away, in the dark, I felt this sudden crushing certainty that it could hear me perfectly. It just didn't care. It was waiting. And it felt like it was waiting for me.
Tonight is night 3. I haven't done any work. My monitors are asleep. I've just been pacing the length of my office. 10 steps there, 10 steps back. My reflection in the window looks different now, wilder. My tie's loose, my hair's a mess. I look like the kind of guy who loses it. I checked the window 5 minutes ago. The landing across the street is empty. For a second, I felt relief. Maybe I was crazy. Maybe I hallucinated it and now my brain has fixed itself. But then I realized something. I didn't want it to be gone. I needed to know. I need to prove that I am analytical, that I am an observer, not the observed. I can't be my father. I can't just sit in the chair and let the world fade. I have to verify the data. I grabbed my key card. I'm not staying in the box tonight. I'm going to the roof. The elevator ride to the top floor took forever. The numbers ticking up slowly. 41, 42, roof access. I pushed the paddock bar and the heavy steel door, and it slammed open, the wind roaring like a train. It's loud up here. The city sounds like a living thing, a massive breathing beast of sirens and engines. I ran to the edge, gripping the cold concrete parapet. I looked across the street, squinting against the gale, trying to find that rusted fire escape on the other building. "Where are you?" I muttered. "I know you're real." I scanned the opposite wall. Nothing. Just brick and dark windows. "Where are you?" I screamed at this time, frustrated, desperate. Then the wind died. Just for a second. The roar cut out, leaving a ringing silence that felt heavy, like pressure in my ears. I felt the cold first, not the wind chill. This was a deep, radiating cold, like standing next to an open freezer. It was coming from behind me. I turned around slowly, my heart hammering against my ribs like a trapped bird. I wasn't alone on the roof. Standing on the corner of the parapet, right on the very edge where the drop goes straight down 150 meters to the pavement, was the figure. It wasn't across the street. It was here. Up close, it was worse. The coat wasn't fabric. It looked like heavy, matted shadow swallowing the light. It didn't have a face, just a smooth, pale surface where a face should be, angled slightly downward, looking at the drop. Then, without moving its feet, without shifting its weight, the head rotated, smoothly, mechanically, until that blank, pale surface was facing me. I took a step back, my heel hitting a vent pipe. I was trapped between the door and the drop. And for the first time in my life, looking at that thing, I didn't feel the fear of falling. I felt the urge to step forward.
I blinked, just a hard, physical reset of my eyes, trying to clear the data error. And it was gone. The corner of the parapet was empty. The wind came roaring back instantly, slapping my face with that gritty, city smog taste. My brain started firing rapidly, trying to categorize what just happened. Hallucination, stress-induced psychosis, visual artifact. But I couldn't let it go. I had to be sure. I walked to the edge. I had to look over. I had to see if it had fallen, or if it was climbing down, or if... I placed my hands on the freezing concrete of the parapet and leaned over. I looked straight down the vertical line of the building. 150 meters of sleek glass and steel plunging into the black asphalt below. There was nothing, just the drop. "See?" I whispered to myself, my voice trembling. "Nobody there. Just you. Just..." I didn't feel the hand. Hands are warm. Hands have skin. What hit me was a wall of pressure. Like the air itself had solidified into a hammer. It slammed into the center of my back with impossible, crushing force. My feet left the roof. I didn't scream. I didn't have time. The world just flipped. The sky was below me. The roof was above me. And then the wind was screaming in my ears as gravity took hold. I fell past the maintenance level. I flailed, my fingernails scraping uselessly against the glass, making this horrible screeching sound. Thud! My chest slammed into something hard. The air exploded out of my lungs. I had hit an ornamental ledge, a jagged architectural lip that jutted out maybe 3 stories down from the roof. It was narrow, maybe 30 centimeters wide, designed for aesthetics, not for people. My momentum tried to carry me over the edge of it back into the void. I scrambled, my fingers clawing at the rough stone. My right hand found a groove, but the stone was short. I felt the skin on my palms tear, a hot, wet slide of blood making the grip slick.
No, no, no! I gasped, the words bubbling up with a metallic taste of blood. I managed to hook my elbow over a metal support bracket. I was tangling there, 140 meters above the street. My legs kicked at nothing. The wind was brutal now, freezing the sweat and blood on my skin. I looked up. High above me, peering over the edge of the roof I'd just been pushed from, was the face. That pale, blank oval. It watched me struggle. It watched my blood drip on the glass. It didn't move. It was just observing, collecting the data.
They found me at 5:43 a.m. A maintenance crew for the window washing rig spotted me. I'd been out there for 6 hours. I don't remember the rescue. I remember the sound of the harness clicking, the feeling of being hauled up like a sack of meat. I remember the paramedics cutting my shirt open because it was frozen to my skin. My hands are ruined. Nerve damage in the right, severe lacerations in the left. Typing is hard now. The doctors say with physical therapy, I'll get 90% functionality back. They talked about adrenaline, about miraculous survival, about how lucky I was to hit that ledge. But they don't know about the push. I quit my job. I had to. I can't go into the city anymore. I can't look at tall buildings. Even seeing a picture of a skyline makes the room spin, makes the floor feel like it's tilting under my feet. I live in a basement apartment now. No view. The windows are the little rectangular ones at the top of the wall that only show feet walking by on the sidewalk. It's safe. It's grounded. But sometimes, when it's late and the street is quiet, I sit in my chair. I sit perfectly still. I don't turn on the TV. I don't look at my phone. I just stare at the wall. And I realize, with this cold, sinking horror, that I finally understand my father. I used to think he was weak. I used to think he just gave up. But now I know. He wasn't staring at nothing. He was just trying not to blink. He was trying to keep the world steady. Because once you know how easy it is to be pushed, once you know that the silence isn't empty, that the isolation is actually watching you back, you realize that moving is dangerous. So I sit here. I count the cracks in the plaster. I make sure everything is perfectly still. And I wait for the day the cold spot appears behind my chair again.
You can sit there if you want. No, not that chair. I keep that one clear for the emergency exit path. Sit on the sofa. You're looking at my hair, aren't you? Not a strand out of place. It's a French twist. Tie it against the scalp. I've been doing it every morning for 15 years. It takes me exactly 4 minutes. Same with the lipstick. Very bold. It's supposed to inspire confidence. Does it work? Do I look confident to you? I know what everyone says. They say Bonnie's lost it. Bonnie went crazy and locked herself in her apartment. They probably tell you I'm a hoarder or something, surrounded by cats and newspapers. But look around. It's spotless. I vacuum twice a day. The coasters are aligned. The windows are covered with heavy blackout curtains, taped at the edges. Not a sliver of light gets in, and more importantly, not a sound gets inside. I can't handle the noise. Specifically, I can't handle the sound of jet engines. Which is ironic, considering I spend 18 hours a day listening to them. Come over here. Look at this setup. This is my station. I have 3 monitors going. That one on the left is the live air traffic radar for the entire eastern seaboard. The middle one is the weather radar. I'm tracking a low-pressure front moving in from the Atlantic right now. It's got wind shear written all over it. And this scanner, this is tuned to the local approach frequency. I don't do this for fun. I'm not a hobbyist. I'm the only one actually paying attention. You think the pilots are in control? Please. Half of them are exhaustive, and the other half are relying on computers running code written by the lowest bidder. And the controllers? They're overworked. They miss things. I don't miss things. I sit here and I document. I write down the call signs. I check their descent rights. If Skyview 492 comes in too steep, I log it. If a cargo flight misses a waypoint by 2 kilometers, I write it down. I'm keeping a list because eventually the math isn't going to work out. Eventually, gravity wins. I'm just waiting for the silence. That's how you know it's happened. The radio chatter stops, and the little green dot on the screen just freezes. I need to be awake when it happens. Someone has to witness it. You want to know why I'm like this? You want to know why a 38-year-old woman with a paid-off condo and a master's degree won't step past her own welcome mat? It's not agoraphobia. I'm not scared of the outside. I'm scared of physics. People think planes are safe. They quote statistics. Safest way to travel, they say. You're more likely to die in a car crash. That's cute. But see, when your car breaks down, you pull over to the side of the road. When a plane breaks, you become a falling object. And nobody can do anything but watch. 10 years ago, I was the lead flight attendant on Flight 702. We were cruising at 10,000 meters. Service was done. The cabin was dim. People were sleeping. It was peaceful. Then there was a sound. Not a boom, not an explosion. It sounded like a giant sheet of canvas being ripped in half right next to your ear. Metal fatigue. That's what the report said later. A microscopic crack in the fuselage that nobody saw during maintenance. The pressure differential just popped it open. A section of the roof, maybe 2 meters wide, just peeled back like a sardine can. The air inside the cabin didn't just leave, it was sucked out violently. The temperature dropped 40 degrees in a second. The wind. You can't imagine the wind. It wasn't just breezy. It was a physical punch to the face. It screamed. A high, loud, inhuman scream. It was so loud, you couldn't hear yourself think. You couldn't hear the captain screaming over the intercom. I was strapped into my jump seat, but Mr. Moran, he was in 4C. He'd unbuckled to get a magazine. I saw him lift out of his seat. Just float up, like a magic trick. Then the suction grabbed him. I unbuckled, I know, stupid, but I lunged for him. I grabbed his belt, I wrapped my arm around the seat leg and held on to him. We were right next to the hole. I could see the night sky, so black and cold. I could see the stars. They looked so indifferent. We hung there for 20 minutes while the pilots did an emergency dive. 20 minutes of wind trying to tear my arms out of my sockets. 20 minutes of looking at the jagged, torn aluminum vibrating in the wind, knowing that if one more rivet popped, the whole plane would unzip. I looked into the cockpit later, after we landed. I saw the pilots' hands shaking, covered in sweat. They didn't save us because they were skilled. We lived because the metal decided to hold on for just a few more minutes. That's it. Luck. So don't tell me it's safe. I know what holds those machines together. It's just screws and glue and faith. And I've run out of faith. It was Mom. That's the only reason I left the basement. Dad called and said her kidneys were shutting down, and if I wanted to say goodbye, I had to be in Seattle by morning. There are no trains that fast. So, here I am. Flight 492, seat 24A. I'm sitting directly over the wing box because structurally, it's the strongest point of the fuselage. If we snap in half, we'll snap behind me or in front of me. Small comforts. I've been watching the crew since I boarded. They're children. The girl working the aisle, her name tags is Julia. She's chewing gum. I can see her jaw working while she does the safety demo. She missed the latch check on bin 14. I saw it. She just tapped it. She didn't verify the lock. There's a 20-kilogram carry-on in there. If we hit clear turbulence, that bin opens, the bag flies out, and the passenger in 14C gets a skull fracture. Am I the only one seeing this? I'm sweating. I can feel the perspiration soaking into my blouse, ruining the starch. I have my hands folded in my lap, gripping my obsidian stone. It's a jagged piece of black volcanic glass, about the size of a fist. Sharp edges. It helps me focus. It reminds me of the ground. We take off and the noise is unbearable. The engines whine, creating that harmonic vibration that rattles your teeth. I close my eyes and I count the seconds. 1, 1,000. 2, 1,000. Every second we climb, the air outside gets thinner. The pressure differential builds. The metal skin of the plane stretches, expanding like a balloon. I can hear it groaning. The passengers think it's just the plastic trim rattling. I know better. It's the rivets screaming under the load. We hit 9,000 meters. The fasten seatbelt sign dings off, and then we bump. It's nothing, really, just a thermal pocket. The coffee in the cup on my tray table ripples, but my body doesn't know it's just a thermal. My body remembers the drop. My stomach lurches into my throat. The cabin lights flicker for a fraction of a second, probably just a power bus transfer, but in that blink of darkness, I'm back on Flight 702. The smell of cheap coffee vanishes, replaced by the smell of ozone and frozen hydraulic fluid. I hear the tear. It's faint at first, like a zipper opening slowly behind my head. Zip! Did you hear that? I whisper, leaning toward the guy next to me. The man next to me, a guy in a hoodie watching a movie on his phone, doesn't even look up. He doesn't hear it. How can he not hear it? It's getting louder. It's the wind. The wind is trying to get in. I look out the window. The wing is flexing. It's supposed to flex, I know the specs. It can bend 4 meters before failure, but it's bouncing too much. I see a shadow near the flaps. Is that a crack? It looks like a hairline fracture in the aluminum. Ding! The seatbelt sign comes back on. The captain's voice comes over the intercom, but it sounds distorted to me, slow and demonic. Folks, bumping, air, seatbelts. He sounds drunk or dying. Maybe hypoxia? Is the cockpit depressurized? If they're passed out, nobody is flying in the plane. We're just a missile now. My heart is hammering against my ribs like a bird trapped in a cage. I grip the obsidian stone so hard the sharp edge slices my palm. The sting of the cut clarifies things. The pain focuses me. The plane lurches again, harder this time. A bag falls out of an overhead bin 3 rows up. That's it. It's happening. The structural integrity is gone. The crew isn't doing anything. Julia is just bracing herself against a cart, looking bored. She doesn't know we're already dead. I can't let us die, not again. If the pilots are incapacitated, someone has to stabilize the aircraft. Someone has to prepare the cabin for a high-velocity impact. These children don't know the drills. They don't have the muscle memory. I unbuckle my seatbelt. "Ma'am, the sign is on," the guy on the hoodie says, finally looking up, annoyed. I ignore him. I reach into my purse and pull out my compact mirror. My face is pale, clammy. This won't do. A flight attendant projects calm. A flight attendant is the face of authority. My hands are shaking, but I force them to steady. I wipe the sweat from my upper lip. I take out my berry bold lipstick. I apply it slowly, carefully. 1 swipe top, 1 swipe bottom. I press my lips together. Perfect. I fix my hair. I smooth the wrinkles in my blouse. I stand up. The floor is tilted. We're in a bank, or maybe a stall, but I know how to walk on a moving surface. I lock my knees, absorb the shock. I walk into the aisle. Julia sees me. She looks annoyed. "Ma'am, you need to sit down. We're experiencing turbulence." She's blocking the way to the cockpit. She's blocking the way to salvation. I smile at her. It's my best smile. It's the smile I wore when I served drinks to senators. It's the smile I wore when I held Mr. Moran's belt while the sky tried to eat us. "It's okay, honey," I say. My voice is steady, smooth as glass. I'm senior flight crew. I'm taking over the watch. "What? No, sit down." I bring the obsidian hand up. The stone is black and wet with my own blood. I hold it like a hidden blade, tucked against my forearm, just the jagged tip showing. "The cockpit is compromised," I tell her, stepping closer. I can see the confusion in her eyes. She thinks I'm a passenger. She doesn't see the uniform I'm wearing in my mind. "I need you to secure the galley and prep for a water landing. Do not argue with me, Julia. We are losing altitude." I verify the location of the crash axe in my head. If the cockpit door is locked, I'll need it. "Ma'am," she shouts, reaching for the interphone. She's panicking. Panic is dangerous. Panic kills. I have to correct her behavior. I have to secure the cabin. "Cabin crew," I whisper, tightening my grip on the black glass. "Prepare for impact." "Sit down," she screams, lunging toward me. I don't want to do it. Honestly, I don't. Julia's just a kid. But she's an obstruction. In a catastrophic event, you remove obstructions. It's in the manual. My hand moves before I even decide to do it. It's muscle memory. Swipe. The obsidian is sharper than a surgical scalpel. It opens a bright red line across her throat, right above the collar of her cheap polyester uniform. She doesn't scream. She just makes a wet, gurgling noise and grabs her neck. Her eyes go wide, finally paying attention. "Secure your station, Julia," I say firmly, stepping over her as she slides down the galley cabinets, leaving a smear of red on the beige plastic. The passengers in the first few rows are staring. They're so quiet. They see the blood on my hands, on my white blouse. They see the calmness in my face. They think this is part of the show. Or maybe they're just frozen, like deer in headlights. Good. Compliance is key. I reach the cockpit door. It's reinforced, bulletproof. but I know the override code. 1219. It was the birthday of the chief pilot at my old airline. Most of them never change it. Beep, 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 beep. The latch clicks. I push inside. The cockpit is dark, lit only by the amber glow of the instruments. It smells like old coffee and sweat and fear. The first officer turns in his seat. Hey, you can't be in here. He's young. He looks terrified, eyes darting everywhere. He's obviously lost control. The plane is banking. I can feel the artificial horizon tilting wildly in my inner ear. You're stalling her, I explain, stepping forward, careful not to touch the controls. I raise the stone. You're flying too high. The air is too thin. The fuselage can take the pressure. He tries to unbuckle, but he's too slow. I drive the obsidian down into the soft spot between his neck and shoulder. He slumps forward, hitting the yoke with his head. The plane dives sharply. The captain shouts something. I think it's Mayday, but I silence him too. It's messy. It's regrettable. But they were going to kill us all. They were just going to let us drift until the roof ripped off again. I pull the captain's body out of the left seat. He's heavy, dead weight, but adrenaline makes me strong. I shove him onto the floor, next to his colleague. I sit down. The sheepskin seat cover feels familiar. The yoke feels cold and alive in my hands. The alarms are blurry now. Pull up! Pull up! Wind shear! It's just noise. I put on the headset. The silence is instant. I look out the window. We are descending fast. The altimeter is unwinding like a clock in a nightmare. 2,000 meters. 1,500 meters. Below us, the city is a sprawling grid of gold and amber lights reaching up into the night. It's beautiful. And there, right ahead of us, I see it. The runway. It's vertical, rising up to meet us, glittering with thousands of windows, a massive tower of glass and steel, perfectly illuminated. But to me, it looks like a safe harbor. It looks like solid ground. It looks like the only place in the world where the wind can't hurt us. Tower, this is Flight 492. I speak into the dead microphone. My voice is calm, professional. We are on final approach, gears down, requesting immediate landing. I push the yoke forward. I line up the nose of the plane with the center of the building, correcting the excessive bank. The wind shear alarms are screaming. The proximity warnings are going crazy. But I don't feel fear anymore. I feel relief. I remember Mr. Moran floating out of his seat. I remember the sound of the metal tearing. I've spent 10 years waiting for that sound to come back. I've spent 10 years holding my breath, waiting to fall. But now I'm in control. I'm putting us down. I see the office windows of the building rushing toward me. I can see desks. I can see people working late. They look surprised to see me. I smooth my skirt. I check my lipstick in the reflection of the primary flight display. Perfect. The lights of the city are so bright, they're blinding. They're warm. I close my eyes and I smile. Ladies and gentlemen, I whisper, just as the nose makes contact with the glass and the roar of the final impact swallows the sound of the plane. We have arrived.
I'm good with numbers. It's what I do. I'm a risk analyst for a big finance firm, which is a fancy way of saying I spend my days staring at spreadsheets, calculating probabilities, and trying to predict the unpredictable. I find comfort in it, in the logic. You can chart a market fluctuation, you can model a corporate default. There's a pattern, a reason, even in chaos. My whole professional life is built on a simple premise. With enough data, you can manage any risk. You can stay in control. My office is on the 89th floor of the Tower of the Century. It's mostly glass, and on clear days, I can see the entire city sprawled out below me like a circuit board. It's a view that's supposed to make you feel powerful, I guess. Most days, it just makes me feel far away from everything that actually matters. My desk is neat, my files are color-coded, and at 5:15 p.m. every single day, I start packing up my bag. Because the most important calculation I make is the one that gets me on the 5:47 p.m. train home to my kids, Ryan and Christy. That's my real job. Managing their chaos, from scraped knees to homework meltdowns, is the only kind of unpredictability I've ever truly loved. My goal, every single day, is just to make it back home to them. It's funny. For someone who gets paid to worry, my deepest fears have nothing to do with money. I'm not scared of market crashes or economic collapse. My real fear, the one that lives in the quiet, dark corners of my mind, has always been about randomness. The sheer dumb luck of tragedy that no spreadsheet can predict. It's the fear of being on the wrong flight. The terror of my last moments not being filled with thoughts of a life well lived, but with the screech of twisting metal and the agonizing, helpless knowledge that I'm never going to see my children's faces again. I run the numbers in my head sometimes, a morbid little habit. The odds of a catastrophic plane failure are minuscule, something like 1 in 11 million, but they aren't zero. And that's the part that terrifies me. The fear isn't of dying itself, it's of failing. It's the thought that my last breath would be a gasp of regret, knowing Ryan and Christy would have to grow up with a mother-shaped hole in their lives that I could never, ever fill. My only motivation, the only thing that has ever truly driven me, is them. Getting back to them is the entire point. I never knew that this quiet, everyday fear was just a rehearsal, a practice run for the real thing. I never imagined I'd have to face that primal terror right here in my safe, orderly office, 89 stories above the ground. The day it happened was a Tuesday. It was offensively normal. I had dropped the kids at school, Ryan complaining about a history test, Christy proudly showing me a drawing of a 6-legged dog, and arrived at my desk by 8:30 a.m. I was on my third cup of coffee, staring at a projection model for a new tech fund, trying to decide if the numbers were optimistic or just plain delusional. Outside my window, the sky was a crisp, perfect blue, the kind of day that makes you feel guilty for being inside. I remember making a mental note to take Ryan and Christy to the park after school, maybe even get ice cream. It was 9:02 a.m. The first sign was a shudder, a low, deep tremor that seemed to vibrate up through the soles of my shoes. It was so faint, I almost dismissed it. This tower is a city block wide and over 400 meters tall. It sways in the wind. But this felt different. It wasn't a sway. It was a jolt, sharp and vertical, like a giant had kicked the building's foundation. My coffee sloshed, leaving a brown ring on a stack of pristine reports. Across the aisle, my colleague Mark looked up from his screen, a question in his eyes. We shared a look, a silent, "Did you feel that?" before a shared, unspoken shrug of dismissal. Buildings make noises. We went back to work. 2 minutes later, it happened again, but this time it was no tremor. It was a deep, guttural thump that felt less like a sound and more like a pressure change that punched the air from my lungs. The entire 89th floor lurched violently to the side. Not a sway, but a vicious, sickening snap, like a bone breaking. The lights flickered, buzzed with an electrical snarl, and died, plunging the office into a surreal twilight, lit only by the morning sun and the glow of 100 computer monitors. This time, there was no denying it. A woman screamed somewhere down the hall. My heart hammered against my ribs, but my first thought, the analyst's thought, was a detached, stupidly clinical one. Structural failure, sublevel, most likely a gas explosion or primary support column compromise. And then, immediately, the second thought, the mother's thought, slammed into me with the force of a physical blow. Ryan. Christy.
Chaos erupted. People were shouting, scrambling from their desks, a sudden panicked herd in a glass-walled pasture. My own legs felt like they were filled with concrete, but I forced myself to move, control the situation, manage the risk. That's what I do. I joined a small panic group moving toward the central emergency stairwell, my voice surprisingly steady as I told people to stay calm, to walk, not run. But as we reached the fire door, a wave of heat washed over us. So intense it felt like opening an oven. The heavy metal of the door was already warping, the red paint blistering and peeling away like sunburnt skin. A thick, oily black smoke was pouring from the seams around the frame, smelling of burning plastic and something else, something acrid and chemical. It wasn't an escape route, it was a furnace. Panic turned to pure terror. The rational part of my brain was screaming that there were other exits, other stairwells at the building's four corners. But the primal fear was already taking over. We were cut off. I ran, leading a few others toward the service elevators at the core of the building, my mind racing through the floor plans I'd memorized during countless boring fire drills. Deny it. Find another way. This can be managed. But the elevator buttons were dark, dead. The call panel was cold to the touch. Nothing. We were shouting now, a babble of panicked voices echoing in a now dark corridor. And that's when I saw it. I looked up at the decorative ceiling panel above the elevators and I saw a hairline crack that wasn't there before. As I watched, mesmerized in horror, the crack widened with a faint grinding sound. A fine powder of dust and pulverized drywall rained down on my hair. The building groaned around us, a long, agonizing sound like a dying beast. The floor beneath my feet tilted, just a few degrees, but enough to send a rolling chair careening down the hall and smashing into a wall. The point of no return wasn't a choice I made. It was a physical shift in the world beneath me. I was standing on a platform that was coming apart, 89 stories in the air. The monster wasn't coming for us. We were already inside it. The smoke was a living thing. It wasn't just in the air anymore. It was a predator, thick and greasy, hunting us through the corridors, stealing the light and the oxygen. People were on the floor, coughing, their bodies racked with spasms. Mark, my colleague, was trying to smash a window with the fire extinguisher, but the reinforced glass just shuddered, a spider web of cracks appearing without giving way. Every calculation, every risk assessment model I had ever built was useless here. There was only one certainty. If we stayed on the 89th floor, we would die. And my last thought would be of Ryan and Christy, my failure. That one thought cut through the chaos with the clarity of a diamond. The fear I had harbored in the dark of night wasn't an abstract terror anymore. It was a physical presence wrapping itself around my throat. I would not let my children's last memory of their mother be a picture on a news report. I would not die a statistic. I looked at the window Mark had sailed to break. The cracks had weakened it. Beyond the glass, the world was still there. The perfect blue sky, the distant, unbothered clouds. It was an obscene contrast to the hell we were in. The street, a dizzying 400 meters below, was a map of a world I no longer belonged to. But it was the only way down. The analyst in my brain screamed. Terminal velocity, wind shear, structural integrity, 0. It was a suicide note written in the language of physics, but the mother, the desperate, primal animal that had taken over, saw something else. She saw the building's decorative exterior lattices, a grid of steel beams and ledges just outside the glass. A ladder. A horrifying, insane, impossible ladder that was 89 stories tall. It was a 1 in a billion chance, but 1 was not 0. 0 was staying here. Help me, I rasped, my voice raw. I grabbed a heavy desktop computer, the monitor still glowing with meaningless stock tickers. Together, Mark and I swung it like a battering ram into the fractured window. On the third swing, the world exploded outward in a cascade of glass and a roar of wind that momentarily cleared the smoke. The city's noise, a distant symphony of sirens, rushed in. For a moment, we just all stared into the abyss. Then I moved. Before logic could reassert itself, I was climbing through the jagged frame. The wind tore at my clothes, a physical force trying to rip me from my perch. My hands, already bleeding, found a purchase on a cold steel beam. I didn't look back. My world had shrunk to the single terrifying task. My whole body was screaming, but my mind was chanting a mantra. Ryan Christie, Ryan Christie. My descent was a journey through hell, 1 floor at a time. My sensible office shoes, so practical for my commute, had no grip. I kicked them off, feeling the rough cold steal through my thin stockings. Every handhold was a prayer, every foothold a miracle. The 87th floor greeted me with a blast of heat. A window below me blew out, and a dragon's breath of orange and black fire roared into the sky, so close I could feel my skin blister. I screamed, a raw animal sound lost in the wind. I had to move sideways, my fingers screaming as I shimmied along a narrow ledge, the fire licking at my back. The smell of my own burning hair filled my nostrils. I don't know how many floors I passed in that state of pure terror. Debris rained down from above, shards of glass, chunks of concrete. A piece of falling metal struck my shoulder, and the impact nearly tore me from the building. My grip held, but my arm went numb, a dead weight I had to drag with me. My hands were raw meat. At some point, the rational part of my mind returned, not with comfort, but with a new horror. It started counting. 64s to go. 55. Each number was a judgment, a reminder of the sheer impossibility. I saw glimpses of the horror inside as I passed. Faces pressed against windows, mouths open in silent screams before they were swallowed by smoke. I was fading. The pain was a constant, deafening noise. I found a small ledge on what might have been the 40th floor and collapsed onto it. I was gonna die here, a failure. I closed my eyes and I saw them. Ryan at his last soccer game, his face flushed with pride. Christy asleep in my arms, her small hand curled around my finger. It wasn't a memory, it was a lifeline. It was a fire in my veins that burned hotter than the one consuming the building. It was the only thing that mattered.
I don't know how I got moving again. I think I simply fell. A controlled, scraping slide down a vertical beam, my mangled hands and burned skin breaking my descent. And then, a new sound cut through the chaos. A shout. It wasn't from above. It was from below. Through the smoke, through the tears and the blood, I saw them. Firefighters. They were on the floor below me, maybe the 35th. They had broken through a window from the inside and were staring up at me, their faces a mixture of disbelief and horror. A pair of strong hands reached out, beckoning me. That last drop was the hardest. My body had nothing left. It was pure will, fueled by the image of my children's faces. My fingers slipped. My feet found no purchase, and for one heart-stopping second, I was falling. The city rushed up to meet me, but they caught me. Strong arms wrapped around my broken body, pulling me from the open sky and into the smoky, debris-strewn wreckage of an office. The floor was solid beneath me. I wasn't falling anymore. The last thing I remember before the blackness took me was the face of a firefighter. His eyes wide with awe, the soot on his cheeks making him look like a ghost. "My God," he whispered, his voice cracking. "Where did you come from?" I tried to answer. I tried to tell him about my risk analysis, about my commute, about the park, about ice cream for Ryan and Christy. But all that came out was a broken, desperate whisper. A single word. That was the beginning and the end of my entire world. Home.
The horrors linger. Thank you so much for watching or listening. By liking and subscribing, you're helping me summon the next chilling tale from the shadows. Join our community of the brave and prepare for what's to come.